Hey guys, this is Mark.
And I'm Michelle.
And we're here for episode 29.
This is Mark and Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
We had a crazy week.
Mm-hmm.
Had new flooring put in, so we pretty much had to move the whole house. And then Mark got a stomach bug.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a miraculous recovery because I logged into the medical medium detox support group, and then I Googled stomach bug. Well, I didn't Google it. I searched.
Yeah, right.
And they said eat pears. No matter how bad you're throwing up, eat pears. I wasn't throwing up, but I felt it coming on. And they said to take echinacea, golden seal, and silver, colloidal silver.
Mm-hmm.
What else did I do? Anyway,
Did you take cat's claw and that kind of stuff?
I did. I think I just took everything that seemed like a cleansing herb. And I ended up not getting sick. Pears are amazing. I think they saved me. Who wants to have a stomach bug? Anyway, we had a crazy week.
Yeah, we did have a crazy week. And fortunately, we're getting stuff back in on the new carpet here in this room. And
so we're on a tablet today.
Yeah, so since none of the computers are up.
Yep, they're all down.
Mm-hmm.
But we have wireless because Mark's brilliant.
Yeah, well, just make sure it stays plugged in.
So in our moving, and not actually moving, we've gone through a lot of boxes and things, and I found this photo from when we first got married. Is it there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a glare on it, so...
right there, is that good?
That's good.
And he doesn't really look autistic, does he?
Right. No inflammation.
No.
Yeah, there's even a sparkle almost in my eye, I think. Yep. Yep, that was 94.
Yep.
Yep.
But looking back at that time, he was definitely autistic. It's just the inflammation just wasn't showing up.
Just wasn't there. And that makes me wonder how much gut damage affects autism. Because obviously I wasn't overweight at that point, and I was autistic, but not overweight at that point. Very little inflammation at that point. I think as you get older, the gut damage causes more inflammation and that type of thing.
Here he is playing cello in our apartment. We had just gotten married.
Mm-hmm.
And here he was cooking for us at my mom's house.
Is that your mom's?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess it's your mom's. Okay.
Yep. And here he's getting apple out of his teeth. Anyway, that was Mark then when I met him.
Yeah. And still autistic, we just didn't know it.
You saw I posted Medical Mediums live today. He talked about the root of all of these problems is the liver.
Mm-hmm.
And we are referring to gut often because that's what we thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a sign that the liver has really gone south.
Well, and it makes logical sense if it yet doesn't make scientific sense in the fact that since your liver detoxes your blood of most everything, if your liver's backed up and not working, then the toxins are backing up in you and starting to damage stuff. So logically, that makes sense. When your purifier doesn't work, then you start to back up on all of these toxins. So, logically it makes sense.
It was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, today you wanted to talk about the emotional loss. Is that how you put it?
No, emotional cost.
Cost of autism.
Of autism, because I think that most people go through it without realizing that it's a thing. In the sense of it's something that we suffer through, and there are ways to handle it as much as ways to handle it better. And so what I mean by the emotional cost of autism is when you're autistic, what emotional traumas do you go through? What emotional stress do you go through? What damage is done to you emotionally because you have autism? I also mean by the emotional cost of autism in the sense of you caregivers out there, you moms, grandmothers, grandfathers, dads, whatever, who are taking care of autistic kids or loved ones, what emotional cost do you go through? Those big things like your life is completely consumed by autism. 24 hours a day, you are concerned with autism, unless you're asleep, because it affects every area of your life. How does autism affect your relationships? How does your loved one's autism make you feel? Stuff like that. And I'm going to have Michelle talk about her experiences with the emotional cost of autism when we lived most of our married life with it, and then I'll talk about my experiences a little more in depth than I did last week. Okay, so you may not have thought about it much.
Now, do you have a specific question?
Well, let's go with questions. For you, with me being autistic for those 19 years of our marriage, what was the biggest emotional issue for you with me being autistic?
Helping you relate to people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Being a social translator.
Mm-hmm.
Helping me figure out the social stuff in people. That's what you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you never did.
No.
There was nothing I could say that would help you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the pain. It was painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I guess it's like with parents, you see what your autistic kids go through, but no matter how much you explain to them, hey, you could handle it this way or you could handle it that way, it never gets through and rarely ever improves.
Well, and you would obsess for weeks about one incident.
Mm-hmm.
And we would rehash and rehash and rehash and rehash and rehash.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing ever helped you chill out about it. Nothing, you never relaxed about any of it ever. It would just move to the next whatever it was.
Then it would move from one crisis to the next crisis,
yes.
Is what you're saying. Well, my moving from one crisis to the next crisis, how did that affect you emotionally?
I was always on high.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you explain what that means? That probably makes sense to most people, but for folks who don't get it.
It means I was always like a terrified cat on edge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jumping at anything.
Easily spooked.
Easily spooked.
Mm-hmm. And so what you seem to be saying is that my high stress level kept you at a high stress level, and so when I went from one crisis to the next, you had to go from one crisis to the next,
yes,
just to stay sane, so to speak. And you loved me so much you were willing to help me out through each crisis, but it was as stressful for you, especially when I kept going over it.
The rehashing.
And I remember my rehashing it, there was really nothing else I could do. It was just the way my brain worked at that point. It just kept going over. That was the obsessive compulsive part. Well, the obsessive compulsive personality disorder kicking in, trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so, that always kept her on edge because I was always on edge. Well, how did that affect relationships that you had? How did my autism affect relationships you had with other people?
Well, you weren't around really. And even if you were around, you weren't really around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the only weird things were like you didn't know when to laugh or when to interject into a conversation smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
You would say strange things sometimes that didn't seem to relate to what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because you took us literally.
The El Torero incident.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and like with Kim and Joey, we hung around with them for a good while before we moved from Atlanta, and they were always very accommodating.
Yes.
From what I could tell.
They were.
But
none of us knew anything was wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Y'all just thought I was a weird kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my mom called me. But as far as affecting your other relationships,
stay in the camera.
Oh, am I not in the camera? And
we're close.
All right. Let's see. Well, so it really didn't affect your relationships except when we were all together.
Yes, but it still didn't affect my relationships because mine were mine, and you weren't there, really. You didn't see what was happening there.
Hey, one viewer, Susie. Hey, Susie. And well, yeah, I see what you're saying. I didn't see all the social interaction that went on.
Yeah, you didn't see anything.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that she was pulling out pictures from when we went to Europe back in 2002, and seeing pictures of her in her early 30s, and I'm like, wow, I don't remember her looking that way. And
yeah, he said it's like I'm seeing you for the first time.
Yeah, well, pretty much I was, because as an Aspie, I just didn't remember what you looked like, and that's been 16 years ago now. So I'm slowly coming to terms with what I see. And I'd say that would be an emotional cost for those of us who have autism. When you come out of it, all of a sudden you realize what you missed.
You also realize what you wish you had missed still.
Well, and that's a good point. We can talk about that. But are there other things that were severely and adversely affected by my autism that you can think of?
Well, you were always underemployed, so finances were always an issue. And you were such a smart person, but you couldn't get past the interviews.
Right.
And that severely hampered us.
Yeah. And that is changing. But that's something, and that's something that will go along with what I talk about is being either under or unemployed, more so than the average population when you're autistic. But, well, let me just go through a quick list of stuff. When you're autistic, some of the emotional things, and you only realize some of these emotional costs when you're autistic because they happen to you enough so that they stay in your head. And as an example, being treated as if you're dumb, as if you're stupid. And the reason that's the case is because you can't pick up on social interactions, you can't pick up on communication or learning as quickly as an NT. And now, I know NTs have different abilities to do that, but when you're autistic, you need things explained to you explicitly in great detail. And because of that, that really slows you down on the uptake in social interactions, in school. Really, in any communication, you're just slow on the uptake. And that is part of one of the major symptoms of autism. And so because you're slow, people call you slow. They call you stupid, retarded, or the R word, which is the same thing. And they treat you with contempt because you're not up to speed like everyone else. And I've heard that so often from adults with autism. Don't treat us like we're stupid. And they're not. It's just that the autism is the filter that they use to interact with their everyday life, in and out. And because, in and out. And because that's the case, they're not going to see the world the same way you do. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. But being more patient is a great tactic in handling any person with autism, whether a child or an adult.
Yeah, make your brain go like 5 times slower.
So she knows all about this because she teaches kids and adults on the spectrum, well, all ages. And so that would be one good technique. You're just going to have to be very slow. And nothing wrong with that. But being stupid, definitely. Everybody gets treated like they're not good enough. That you get that drummed through your head quickly as an autistic person, mostly because you tend to take things literally. But you quickly find out that most people think you aren't good enough. And good enough to handle this, that, or whatever else. Let's see. Other emotional costs of autism. And I'll talk about this because it reminded me of it a minute ago when she said under and unemployed. It is so difficult to get through interviews successfully as an autistic person because, again, it's based on communication. And your interviewer is watching you to see how you respond to their questions. Not just by words. For any of you autistic people out there, an interviewer is not looking just for your words. They're looking for your physical and emotional responses on your face and in your behavior back to them when you answer their questions.
Body language.
Body language. And as an autistic person, you're not going to give correct body language, nor are you going to give correct emotional responses. And I'll be straightforward for you. An interview is a test. It just is. I don't care what anybody says. It's a euphemism if they say it isn't a test. An interview is a test because they're looking to see how well you fit in with their group. Now, do your best. The autism is always going to hamper you in interviews. But that's the thing. That is the emotional cost. Because as an autistic person, we've been hampered in interviews for so long and in communicating with people. We miss out on jobs that we are well or even overqualified for because we can't get through the interview. Mm-hmm. That keeps us underemployed, keeps us in retail positions, in positions that pay much less. Not that there's anything wrong with retail, but that tends to be where we wind up settling at, because the more advanced a position, the more responsibility requires you to be able to interact with people, be able to manage people better, to be able to, well, for lack of a better term, control people better and manage people. And as an autistic person, that leaves us out because we just don't understand social communication well enough, emotional communication well enough, nonverbal communication well enough. We don't understand the major points of communication because of the autism. So we start to, as we grow older and find that we're under or unemployed for long periods of time. I was unemployed for 4 years at one point. That really damages you because you want to be useful. People tell you you have to be a useful, productive member of society. Well, when your autism keeps you from doing that, you quickly feel useless.
How many jobs did you apply for during that 4 years?
Oh, man. It had to be around 100. Because I know I put in 60 resumes to Emory University alone. And probably another 20-something at different places. Not retail places, but different universities, companies, and that kind of thing. This was during the height of the financial crisis between, was it 2007 and 2008, 2009. And we lived in Atlanta, which still had a very good economy at that
Mm-hmm.
point. But anywhere between 80 and 100 jobs, definitely in a 2-year period.
You ended up giving up.
I ended up giving up because I had nothing I did made any difference. And
I think I suggested you go to school because they had career centers, and
well, I did do that.
Did you?
And I went to the career center, and here's what I got told: you have to be on top of this. This is in your hands. You're the one who has to fix it. I remember them telling me that. And they brushed me off after that. And that being brushed off happens so often when you're autistic because they don't think that you are doing what you need to do
right
for you. Well, you know what? As an autistic person, you don't know what you need to do for you except get a job. Mm-hmm. And their expectations aren't described in any detail enough for you to go, oh, well, I guess I could do that, or oh, well, I guess I could do that or that. People tend to talk in nebulous emotional language. Implicit language. And while I get the implicit now, I did not as an autistic person. And they did, and most people don't know they're using implicit language, so therefore they don't explain it. Mm-hmm. So they say all kinds of stuff that to most autistic people sounds like utter BS. I mean, I'll be honest, because that's what I said. Most of the time, people sound like they're talking utter BS. They're not. They're just using implicit language, which I now get. It's not BS. I get it now. But because so much sounds like BS, you stay underemployed or unemployed. You take jobs that you are overqualified for. I mean, I have a degree in anthropology, almost all have a degree in biology. But I could do nothing as an autistic person after graduating from, even before I graduated from school, because you have to build relationships with people.
Mm-hmm. Networking.
You have to network. I find it more natural now, but it is not something that I just tend to do on my own. now. And I would say I'm completely recovered, but I just don't normally do that, right? So it's something that I may have to learn how to do. But the system, and I don't mean that negatively, but the system that NTs live in is based on living and working with other NTs. So when autistic people have to enter it, they don't know the password.
Yeah.
To get
that's
in.
very good.
They just don't. And it's not their fault, it's not your fault. But unfortunately, that does require the NT world making more of an effort to meet the autistic person where they're at.
Yes.
Because autism does not allow you to pick up on the password. You don't know that you have to meet people halfway. You don't even know what it means to meet people halfway. I didn't. So, in fact, I wanted to go to graduate school. Someone told me, well, you have to find a mentor and form a relationship. I said, what? What? On both of those. Because mentor, what's a mentor? You know, relationship? What are those?
A mentor would be Merlin.
Merlin? Oh, you mean the wizard?
Yes.
Well, yes. Well, to King Arthur. Merlin was a mentor to King Arthur,
Right.
True. But nobody knew to explain it that way.
I didn't know you were autistic at that point.
I
didn't know what I knew.
I didn't know I was autistic at that point. Dr. Williams was a mentor. He was my physical anthropology teacher. He was a mentor. I didn't know that's what he was.
Yeah, he already was. You had one and didn't know it.
But I didn't know how to make use of a mentor, even though I knew, even
if you'd known that you had one.
Right, I wouldn't know how to.
What a mess.
But that is the quagmire. You are just unconnected to most everything. Not your fault when you're autistic. There's so much you do not see. That's not your fault. It's the autism. If you want to argue that this isn't autism, that's fine. But then this isn't for you. So I'm going to be straightforward. Because since people with autism have liked to pride themselves on their honesty, here it is. Either listen to me or don't. That's your option. So anyway, but the emotional cost of autism, you get highly depressed. So I won't say highly.
He became suicidal.
Severely depressed.
Yeah.
And not just once, numerous times in my life. But in your early 40s, when you're severely depressed, because you tried to find a job for years and it just didn't come through, and you feel useless, you feel unwanted, and the thing is, those feelings are strong enough so that I could tell what they were then. But those were all the things. You literally feel like an outcast. And so I had to work hard to break out of that. So what did I do? I wound up volunteering at the Atlanta Zoo as a volunteer keeper working with the goats and the sheep. And the women that I worked with in the small hoofstock area, which was the kids' petting zoo and that kind of stuff, they liked my work and they recommended me to work in large hoofstock, which was a whole nother area of the zoo. That was rhinos, giraffes, ostriches, duikers, which are little tiny antelopes, kind of bug-eyed antelopes, and then bongos, which were large antelopes, and then zebras and a couple of other animals.
Ostriches.
Yeah, ostriches, that kind of thing. So I was able to get in there. And so I worked as a large hoofstock keeper.
He actually got a job.
Seasonally for about 3 weeks. But because I was so honest as an Aspie, I lost that job because I told them we were moving.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't keep me on. Never do that again. So anyway, the emotional cost of autism on both sides. And there is one. I've heard numerous mothers talk about they wanted to kill themselves because handling the stress of autism was so difficult. They're not a person to blame. They're not a bad mother. They're human.
Yes.
And they're not bad parents. I've even heard of stories of women wanting to kill their kids because they felt so bad that their kid lived with autism. They're not bad. They're not bad people. They're human. They're not bad mothers. They're human. And it doesn't mean that they did, but that's how they felt. Feeling and doing are two different things.
Yes.
So, what did I tell them at the zoo?
That we were moving to Oklahoma City.
Yes. And So they wouldn't keep me on. And I asked a couple of times, I'd like to stay.
That honesty often got him in trouble. It was just...
It did. Even recently, in the past couple of years, it's gotten me in trouble. I won't go into that story, but I finally realized it does not pay to be completely honest.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. That aphorism of honesty is the best policy. Yeah, if the rest of the world were honest, but it isn't. So let's just dispense with the BS. Okay.
Well, you're coming from the Aspie wiring on that too. NTs all grow up learning what to say and what not to say.
Exactly, which means honesty is not the best policy.
Right.
I mean, we'll get through to it. So anyway, but that's just some of the emotional costs of autism from the autistic perspective and Michelle's NT perspective.
And we say this encouraging you to heal your kids now.
Yes.
No matter how hard it is, life with it is harder.
Yes, agreed. My life is so much easier now, about 10 times easier, because I'm realizing that some of my Aspie wiring is what made my life far more complicated. Now that wiring is disappearing, so is all that complication and difficulty. And am I happy about that? Yes, I am happy about that, because I don't have to fight for every inch of ground like trench warfare during the First World War.
And that's how it was for him.
Yeah, that's how it felt. It felt like hundreds of men dying for 3 yards of ground. I mean, every inch was fought for. And now I breeze through stuff. We were breaking down some of this furniture, which I haven't broken down since I was in Aspie.
Yeah.
And it only took 15 minutes to break down the bed and move it. It felt like an hour when I was in Aspie, and
It probably was an hour.
Well, it probably was because it's so difficult. But I put the bed back when I put the bed back the other night.
Yeah.
It's like, man, it only took 15 minutes to put the bed back together.
It was an IKEA bed.
Yeah, but when I was in Aspie, it was a difficult chore to do that.
Yes. So like he was really dreading having to move all of this stuff, and then he was pleasantly surprised that everything was so easy to do.
Right. That is the change in my perspective from 5 years ago to now.
Yeah. We moved 6 years ago last time, I think, right?
We did.
Yeah.
6 years.
And that was before the diet. We started the diet in this house.
Yeah, we did. So I hadn't moved any of this furniture that we moved. Even this table that we're sitting at, I broke it apart in about 10 minutes. But it felt like it took an hour to do it when I was in
it probably did. You were slow.
Yeah.
You were very slow. You had to think about everything.
That's true.
I'm going to turn this nut.
Well, I did. You're right.
Yeah.
And I had to literally think about it.
You're feeling it now. You're just feeling it.
I'm just getting through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're feeling it.
So anyway, anything else you want
We just want to really encourage you, and if you need help,
yes,
we are here.
We are. We can set up a time to coach you and counsel you. We've been doing that with other folks this past week. So if you need help, we're happy to help. So
that's why we're here.
We are. So anyway,
we don't want to have gone through this in vain. We want to
have
learned to help.
Right. We're out there to let you know we can get you through it.
Okay.
Okay. Is that it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.